Hello and welcome to the 2021 Australian Intellectual Property Report. Now 2020 was an unprecedented year with significant economic shocks triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic. This impacted business operations and disrupted supply chains around the world. The global uncertainty has also changed the way individuals and businesses engage with Australia's IP system. We saw a decline in patent and design filings from 2019 levels of 2% and 4%. For patents, this was attributed to a reduction in filings from Australia. For designs, the slowdown in international trade has had a real impact. Plant breeders' rights bucked this trend and grew 12%, but from decade-low filings in 2019, mainly driven by non-residents. But the standout performer in 2020 was trademarks. They grew 8% compared to 2019 and largely driven by filings originating in Australia. Moreover, the biggest peak in applications came from New South Wales and Victoria during the Victorian lockdown. September 2020 recorded the most trademark applications from those two states ever. 94% of all trademark filings came from small and medium enterprises, and that's been rising over the past decade to a peak this year. The top 5 domestic Australian trademark applicants in 2020 were BlueScope Steel, Australia Blue Moon, Aristocrat Technologies, Coles Group and Pinnacle Liquor Group. Internationally, Huawei, Novartis, Apple, Amazon and Johnson & Johnson were the top 5 applicants. For patents, Australia continues to be a net importer of IP, with 92% of patent filings coming from overseas. The US contributed 45% of these applications. Applications coming in from China came second. Japan, Germany and the UK round out the top 5 countries of origin. Australia's leading patent filers are Aristocrat Technologies, the CSIRO, Breville, the Universities of Sydney and Monash University. The top 5 international filers are concentrated in smartphone manufacturing and telecoms. Guangdong Oppo Mobile Telecommunications, a leading smartphone manufacturer in China, maintained its top position from 2019. Other top filers include LG Electronics, Huawei, Apple and Qualcomm. Unsurprisingly perhaps, recording, telecommunication and data processing equipment was also the second most filed type of design right. The top design class was the means of transport and hoisting, and that includes all land, sea, air and space vehicles and their component parts. The list of top Australian applicants is predominantly producers of textile goods. Australian-based fashion label Zimmermann Wear retained its top position in 2020. New to the top 5 and in second place is the menswear label Industry Clothing, and they mainly make packaging designs. For plant breeders' rights, 3 Australian companies tied for bragging rights of being the highest filer in 2020. Australian Grain Technologies, New Flora International and Plant Growers Australia. Rolf nominee and Australian Mr. Ian Shimon rounded out the top 5 domestic filers. The United States and the Netherlands continue to be the top main overseas origins for applications. For international applicants, Huik Svan, a Dutch vegetable breeding company, was the top PBR filer. Eden Collection, also from the Netherlands, and the University of California tied for second place. We are excited to include a chapter on copyright in the IP report this year, contributed by colleagues at the Department of Infrastructure. Australian industries that rely on copyright protection include press, literature, radio and video game. An estimate suggests that copyright industries account for 8% of total employment in Australia, and they generate $4.8 billion in exports. The copyright chapter in this year's report looks further into online infringement and the impacts of COVID-19 on these industries. Finally, we feature new research undertaken by IP Australia into how exporters respond to economic shocks and how holding trademarks makes businesses more resilient to shocks. The research looks at manufacturing firms who file trademarks overseas and find they are more likely to become exporters, or they earn more from exports, and they respond to exchange rate shifts by diversifying their exports. I hope you enjoy the 2021 IP report. Please provide any feedback or comments by email or phone using the details provided. Happy reading.